Hey everyone, so I am here with Niko House. He is an individual that worked for Bernie Sanders, and he was one of the first people to kind of blow the lid off of the DNC's internal sabotage of Bernie Sanders' campaign. But also, he's a really important resource right now because Niko has been assisting the attorneys involved in the DNC fraud lawsuit for months. So he was there for the entire 5-hour hearing, and he's here to give us the scoop. So Niko, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, no problem at all. Thank you for having me, man. I'm a big fan of the show.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. So can you just give us a general rundown of some of the most interesting things during the hearing?
Well, I think we should probably start with the beginning because I think this is a question that gets asked all too often, but many people don't really get an answer to is how do we know it's going to be unbiased? Well, Jared, as you've heard at this point, I'm sure he's an excellent counsel. And the reason that he's an excellent counsel is because he does his research. He researched the judge thoroughly, and we come to learn that he used to be a Democrat, but he actually switched to the Republican Party because of the corruption of the Democratic Party. So,
Wow.
one thing. Yeah. And to capitalize on that as well, he is known as a judge that will make firm stances on corruption. He will make revolutionary stances on corruption, and that has kind of been his stamp as a judge in South Florida. And so a lot of people are concerned because they're saying, which we all know, the justice system can be a little rigged, and especially the judgeship position now that you can have you can announce now that you're a Republican or a Democrat as a federal judge, whereas before it didn't used to be like that. They're worried that it could be rigged in their favor. And that was something that we considered from the very beginning. And we got lucky to see, because we can't really control the judge, right? But in a situation where you would hope that some type of divine intervention would intervene, that's what happened. So we're pretty good there, right? And going forward, the next questions would be, well, what are the grounds for the lawsuit? And I don't want to get into all the legal jargon because
Sure.
it can get a little convoluted. But the main basis is that the DNC is a private entity, in which the DNC attorneys will go into the details of what kind of private entity they consider themselves. But just general knowledge, everybody knows if you're a private entity, you're one of a few things. You're either a sole proprietorship, you're a limited liability company, you're a corporation, or you're a nonprofit. Those are your only options. And so if they're not a sole proprietorship, which they're not, and they're not a limited liability, they're a full-blown corporation or they're a nonprofit. And all four of those have what are called fiduciary duties. They're called fiduciaries, and they have certain fiduciary duties that they owe, especially when there's money involved. So that's the biggest argument that we have. And we're representing four classes, but the main class, obviously, is the people who donated to Bernie Sanders' campaign after being told by the person in charge of the DNC, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, that it's going to be a fair race. Later on, we obviously found that it wasn't a fair race. Jared's arguments, absolutely just solid. He was awesome, magnificent. Couldn't have delivered it any better. He was a lot nicer than I would have been. That's the only thing that was really different about it. And we talked about something that we're going to introduce in the case coming if the motion is denied and we get to proceed with the case. But then probably the most interesting arguments came from the other side of that fence, which was on the defense side, which a lot of people have been talking about. And I don't want to harp too much on they can go behind the room and smoke cigars and choose the candidate that way and nobody can say anything about it. Because, to be quite frank, we obviously know this. Yeah, the DNC attorney is saying that, and I, from a legal standpoint and objective standpoint, am just going to believe that he's saying it because he needs a defense. He has to give one, right? Not saying that it's right for him to say that. He needs a defense, though. But we can't pretend that we didn't know that that's pretty much how they run things. Is they do go through their back channels, have cut backroom deals, and they make their decisions based off of what they want and what's better for the establishment wing of the party. And that's how we ended up with the Donald Trump as president. We don't need someone to break it down like that. And this probably shouldn't have been what pissed people off. What should be what pissed people off is the fact that their whole case is based off the fact that they denied ever being biased in favor of Hillary Clinton. That's what their actual defense is. And many people have gotten confused thinking that they say that they're allowed to be impartial. Now, I think there's something important to understand about what that means. Their main defense, which, of course, I'm sure you're going to post a transcript, so read through those and you'll see this. Their main defense is that they were completely and totally impartial. But they go into thorough detail about how they don't need to be. Now, if you didn't need to be impartial, and you were absolutely sure that that was a concrete, that was a concrete argument, and there was nothing else really that needed to be said, because there's so much precedence out there, because this is legal stuff we're talking about now. There's so much precedence out there that proves we don't need to be impartial because of A, B, C, D. Why not use that as your main defense? Because they know as well as we do, they know as well as Jared did, which is why he provided several federal court cases, that that's not true. A fiduciary is just that. And the fiduciary duties isn't a term we just invented out of thin air. Right. When you're talking about millions of dollars involved in something, especially as, as crazy as this, the whole thing was a circus, but you're talking about millions of dollars involved. And then we find out that the main spokesperson and the leader of this party violated their charter. And then they say that, oh, that charter doesn't mean anything. Then you've essentially lied. You either lied about you lied through the charter, you lied about the charter, and you have to establish a charter when you're incorporated. If I wanted to start a business today, I would still, or a nonprofit, for example, I would still have to create some type of charter if I'm going to sell people, like, these are the rules, right? Right. They said these are the rules, and those weren't the rules. It's pretty obvious that there has to be some accountability, which is why the federal government established fiduciary responsibility, so that people aren't taken advantage of with corporations and nonprofits or whatever that can afford witty lawyers.
Right. So is that basically the crux of Beck's argument going forward? Is it basically they said that they were impartial, but they weren't, so therefore by taking money while claiming to be impartial, that was an act of fraud? Is that essentially what? Essentially,
yes, that is it. Because when you can't, because it's not like they were just given the money. And there are a lot of Bernie people who not only donated to Bernie, but donated to the DNC too, because they wanted to see the Democrats win, because at this point we were under the impression that that money was also being shared impartially. We later find out that's not true. Obviously, as you know, by the denial of Tulsi Gabbard's funds for her campaign. Right. So that wasn't even true. And what's even wilder about that is she was going against another Republican. It wasn't even like she was running against a Democrat. Right. So they solicited. And if they're saying they didn't solicit, I have 50,000 emails with them begging for money time and time again. They solicited funds under their guise that they were impartial, that they were doing what's best, and probably most importantly, what's best for the Democratic Party going forward. Even if you want to say, well, it doesn't matter if they do what's best for progressive. No, but they do have to do what's best for their party members. Right. They have a set of rules that people who joined the Democratic Party thought that they were going to abide by to ensure the best for the party members, and that's simply not the case. Right. Obviously, they're not.
One thing that I wanted to address a little bit further was the argument that they're a private organization. So since they're a private organization, they can do anything what they want to do. Well, one thing that I like about Beck's argument is that he's actually broadening the scope of what's at stake. He's making this about democracy, because I don't really care that you're a private organization. You field candidates that run for president, so you influence democracy. So I don't care if you're a private organization. And furthermore, the fact that you're a private organization isn't influential to me, because private organizations can commit fraud, and this was obviously an act of fraud. Yeah. Right. It happens all the time. Now, one thing I wanted to ask you was, because they're claiming that they were impartial and that there's no evidence. So do you think that the WikiLeaks emails will be admitted into court?
Ooh, yes, they're in the public domain.
Oh, okay.
And then I think we were laughing about this on my live stream the other day with me, Jared, and Liz, but I think what kind of sealed the deal was when Colin Powell was like, well, there are more coming, and these are all true. Like, what do you do at that point? Nobody has denied it. They're going to go on the stand and ask, because this judge, I'm not sure if you read the transcripts, but he's very thorough in asking his questions. And he asked, questions like, is it the DNC's job to be impartial? Do they donate money? Do they fund specific candidates? Do they favor one candidate over the other at the state parties? Do you fund the state party? Like, crazy specific questions to the defense. And I mean, questions that even Jared admittedly said, I've never seen a judge do anything this thorough. Even the counsel of the defense himself said, I've never seen a judge more prepared than the attorney. But it's going to be, I don't even know. It's just crazy to me, because I keep thinking about like how caught off guard he was, and when he asked questions. Do they fund parties? I'm 90% sure they don't fund the party. when we have emails saying the email that leaked via WikiLeaks, actually, that they're not going to fund Tulsi Gabbard,
Right.
you know, and when we know for a fact when the Hillary Victory Fund story broke, the super PAC was funding the state parties. By the way, I know Political got credit for that, and then TYT said something about that. I was actually the person to break that story. I told that story. I called Jordan Sheraton. He was actually the second major journalist outside of U.S. Uncut, the editor-in-chief for U.S. Uncut, that I called, and I broke that story, and I was actually never rightfully given credit for it. They only knew because I had a mentor who essentially was so deep in the North Carolina Democratic Party process that he was able to pinpoint something like that, because obviously that's a pretty big, elaborate scam.
Right.
And somebody inside the party would have to know exactly what that's about before they can bring it to the story, because who would know that?
Right.
That they were funneling money directly to the parties from specifically the Hillary Victory Fund.
Right.
Like, the reason I knew is because I talked to a person who was in the treasury of the North Carolina Democratic Party.
Right.
So,
well, yeah, credit to you, because you've done a lot. Like, as I mentioned at the start, you broke the story on the internal sabotage, and you basically, I think you were incredibly level-headed. You explained very carefully and clearly what was happening and what was weird to you, and you didn't make the statement that this is definitely internal sabotage. It could be incompetence, but there's a lot of things that just don't add up. So you worked for Bernie Sanders in North Carolina. Can you just kind of run over some of the things that you witnessed just briefly?
Man,
I know there's a lot.
So first and foremost, I got a phone call. I can't say the name, but I got a phone call saying, "Hey, man, they're about to hire a state director. This lady cannot be it." And I said, "Why you say that?" He's like, "Just do your research and you'll know almost instantly." So I do the research. Hillary Clinton stuff everywhere, all over Facebook. And at first we were thinking like, hey, we'd be smarter than this, right? Now we know enough about Hillary Clinton's campaign, the people that work for her. Probably not. So, but Hillary Clinton stuff all over Facebook, all over her Twitter. A week or two before she gets hired, I'm with her, blah, 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 blah. You know, the obvious telltale signs. But I didn't say this woman is guilty yet. I just said, now I'm going to keep my distance. I'm going to watch from afar. I'm going to see how things play out. So first thing that happens is that we have a few major events that are just constantly being canceled. And I'm like, why? Because state director said so. And I was like, okay, this is starting to become a pattern. Because there's a lot of man hours going into this at this point, and people are getting pissed. So red flags. Next thing you know, me and another one of Bernie's employees that helped him win the black vote in New Hampshire did such a good job that they begged her to work in North Carolina. She had her suspicions as well. And she called me and we had a one-on-one 3-hour conversation about all the weird things that both of us were seeing. Essentially, you know, you get gear and swag and information to pass out door to door was being held. Hey, can we canvass? No. Firing people. For one person got fired because she stood up to her, emailed the head of the human resources saying, "Hey, this girl is trying to go see her father at her funeral, see her father's funeral or a friend's funeral, essentially, and this woman will not let her go." Aisha fired her after she had a bunch of things proving, hey, no, I've been going back and forth with her about this time and time again. And so I didn't go over her head. It just needed to be done. So that was weird. And I was like, okay, well, maybe she's just, like a bitch. I don't know. That could be it. So I didn't want to put too much stock into that. But then the final straw, 2 things happened in one day. Right before spring break, a spring break that's probably the most memorable spring break of my life at this point, I got a phone call asking me, "Hey, Niko, when are you gonna be here? Or when are you leaving?" I'm like, "Why?" "Oh, we just need to know." I was like, "Well, I'm probably leaving tomorrow." "Oh, okay, that's fine." And I'm like, okay, that was weird. So then I get a text message the day before Bernie Sanders comes to North Carolina. The day before. I'm pissed at this point because what I'm asked to do in that text message is, hey, can you get all the colleges around North Carolina to pretty much help set up for this, get everybody to come a day's notice? And they're like, I was like, well, why did you not think that this was important to tell me? Oh, well, it was because we didn't want the information to get out. I'm like, I'm the director of all the colleges from North Carolina, and you have usually been using our free labor at this point. And the campaign has oftentimes taken credit for this. I have people who are a little irritated because I keep having to give them last minute information because of this lady. And I want some answers. And then I asked my other contact from New Hampshire that's back in North Carolina. I said, did you know about this? Nope. I was like, so you're telling me literally nobody knew about this but like 2 people? And I'm like, yeah. I was like, so they didn't think anybody important to the campaign would need to know that Bernie Sanders was coming in a day. You know, like they thought that we just couldn't help ourselves, you know? And then I'm like the same. And then it's the same. This is all one day. It was a crazy day. That night, remember I told you I had the contact from New Hampshire.
Right.
I get a phone call saying I'm not allowed to talk to her and she's fired from the campaign. So I was like, oh, because at this point, me and my contact had made it perfectly sure that we weren't going to tell anybody that we knew each other. I was like, oh, that's interesting. What did she get fired for? Oh, we can't tell you, but it's illegal to talk to her now.
Wow.
I was like, okay, Bernie does not pay me anything, so it's not illegal to do anything. But okay, copy that, Roger. Thanks for the information. Of course, you know, I call my contact and say, hey, man, you just said, you know, you're fired. She's like, from what? I was like, from the campaign. She was like, I'm not fired. I was like, well, that's not what so-and-so said. And she's just like, I'm going to call you back. And then crazy, the next day we start, of course, the riots happen. I'm driving to Miami, and I'm getting these phone calls, crazy phone calls from like a bunch of people all over the state saying, hey, did you know this happened? For example, the president of the North Carolina NAACP didn't know that Bernie Sanders was coming. None of the black leaders knew, which obviously, as you know, given his campaign, was incredibly uncharacteristic. That's usually the first people he reaches out to.
Right.
When they tried to meet him, Aisha actually fought to stop them from talking to him. I'm so serious about this. Fought to the point where somebody had to pull rank on her, move her out of the way to let the black community come and take pictures and shake hands with them. Like pretty much try to make somebody Bernie want nothing to do with them. I'm like, that is so interesting.
And that was the narrative that we saw pushed through the DNC as well. It wasn't just, you know, Aisha doing that.
It happened, and it was almost like clockwork and then, of course, I had my suspicions too, because one of the people on his campaign finally reached out to me after everything simmered down, because like legally you couldn't do so. But he reached out to me. He said the strategies that I was giving to Bernie for the black community we're not getting back to him. He like pretty much that they were purposely being blocked. He's like, some of it maybe Bernie just didn't like some of it, but we're not getting back to him on purpose. And obviously, as you know, with the Jeff Weaver situation coming out, and it's not surprising because like who else would hire Tad Devine for such a progressive guy? If people knew his record, like they would have pinpointed Tad Devine immediately. But I wasn't going to do it just sheerly off his record. Like he didn't show me anything that was crazy, so I couldn't go with that. But I did know what I knew. And I knew my history of Hillary Clinton in that state that most people have no idea about. They don't know Monsanto is in North Carolina. They don't know Monsanto is in Research Triangle Park. UNC is in Research Triangle Park. She has offices established there that have been established there for years, which is against the party rules to do. For her to leave an office and then have another senator or a future senator or a House representative or House member try to take that over, that's what she was doing. It's illegal. Yeah. They were blocking out black candidates from any type of exposure. They were passing out literature about the Democratic Party in North Carolina, blocking out black candidates. So this isn't something that was new to me. I knew how crooked the Democratic Party was, which is why I didn't want to know part of it. But what we saw was, no offense, I mean, you got to call like you see it in politics, a black woman who was not a part of the African-American caucus. Nobody in the African-American caucus liked this woman. And somehow out of everybody, she gets picked. And then I find out, I can't say how I found out that she was hired under false pretense because she directly lied to the person who hired her, saying, that some of the stuff that was being said about her wasn't true, but neglected to talk about every other truth. she, essentially using her connection to get into the campaign like so many others did. And so, things rolled downhill from there. I got phone calls from former staff members who quit because they could clearly see. I'm sure you heard about the people from Alaska. They formed their own super PAC because they saw the same things I saw across the country in Alaska. Saw the same things we saw people in Nevada. And then what we started seeing is rolling downhill. Like the corruption became more and more and more blatant. We saw then the exit polling got taken off. This is all happening within the same month. Mm-hmm. And we're just like, and then the situation in New York happens. And I go to New York. That's why I actually moved to New York, was to get a feel of that situation. Because it was like, that's huge. I'm like, 100,000 people get dropped from the rolls, and people all in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Like, what? And people were like, it's not that big of a deal. And people have no idea how big of a deal Brooklyn is to that election. Brooklyn essentially could make or break that election. And when you're talking about 100,000 votes, I don't give a damn if it was one vote. Mm-hmm. Bernie in that state could not afford that. You get what I'm saying? Because we know he was going to win the whole New York State. That's just how the demographics work. But in that city, he couldn't afford that. And people keep trying to pretend he would have still lost. We don't know, because that's not how it's set up in precincts, and everything has its worth at the end of the day. And we don't know what effect really that had on the election going forward. And when you start seeing a pattern like that, and I'm seeing what I'm seeing, then we start seeing the vote rigging, and then I'm putting everything together like, holy shit, she planned this out 8 years ago. People were being, I'm not joking with you, Mike. We caught somebody who was a consultant for Hillary Clinton's super PAC, got paid $10,000 by this super PAC, was hired at one of the highest levels of Bernie Sanders' campaign 2 weeks later.
It's just like, brazen.
Yeah, and then, obviously when everything dropped, it was vindicating in a sense. I didn't really care. I'm like, I know what I'm looking at. Mm-hmm. We're providing facts, we're providing information. I don't really care either way. They can call me crazy, they can call me what they want to. But I at least wanted people who are working for the campaign to be educated and vigilant, because there are people who this was their income. They look too progressive, and you had to go on to the next state. Guess who wasn't getting brought along? We had situations. The best situation I could think of, the canvasser in South Carolina, the top two canvassers who did the most for Bernie, guess what they didn't get sent to? North Carolina. Yeah. Anybody who was great and motivated was getting put on shitty duties. Anybody else, it was put, given nice cushy jobs, and said, hey, don't let them go canvas. Don't let them touch the voter rolls. Don't let them touch anything. It was crazy, man.
And after seeing all of this play out, I mean, you saw the corruption firsthand, and now you see it going to court. And I just wanted to get your reaction to the fact that, there's really been no party leader or anyone within the DNC actually admit that the party rigged the primaries, with the exception of Tom Perez, who retracted the statement a couple of hours later.
It doesn't look suspicious at all.
Perfectly reasonable. He totally misspoke.
So big, I know, right? When he said I misspoke, I was like, misspoke, bro. At that point, you don't understand English. Right. It was obviously rigged. I misspoke. Right. I meant to say it wasn't rigged at all. Whatever. Yeah.
So now I kind of look at this, I look at this lawsuit as a chance for us to actually hold them accountable. So my question to you is, seeing the corruption firsthand, you were in the trenches. If this lawsuit isn't successful, and we're hoping it is, it looks like we have a judge that's actually doing great work, who's impartial. Do you think they will continue this? Do you think this lawsuit will actually prevent them in the future, even if it is successful, from resorting to this again? I mean, what are your thoughts on the effect that this might have?
So I'm glad you asked this question, because it's something I discussed on my show. This lawsuit in a vacuum, no, this won't stop anything. Bernie Sanders going on this unity tour in a vacuum, no, that's not going to stop anything either. Tulsi Gabbard coming out speaking against, as a veteran and as a woman of color coming out and speaking against the war crimes, war crimes of the United States, and speaking against going against pointless wars and things like that in the vacuum. No, that's not going to help. Nina Turner, being the strong black woman she is in the vacuum, none of that's going to help. Our shows in the vacuum aren't. But when we're doing this, when we're collabing, when you have Tim Black doing what he does, when you have Jordan Sheraton doing what he does, when you have, Tulsi Gabbard conquering despite not having the same funding that she had before. Going out and conquering. Tim Canova still being extremely active in the community. When you still have Bernie Sanders going out and using the DNC's money to get all the love that they thought they were going to get, I think that's hilarious to me. Jill Stein still being active in the community. Like, when you have all of these factors happening simultaneously, and let's not forget about Alex Jones losing so many followers because he's an actor now. He's not actually a psychological, unstable prick.
Surprise there, huh?
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Like, no, you're not acting. I wanted to tell lawyers that, like, nah, bro, he's not acting, man. Like, I can tell when someone's acting. I'm pretty good at telling somebody he's not. He's crazy.
He's legitimately
crazy. It sounds
crazy.
like, something is off about him. I will say that. When you have these type of things all happening at once, like karma, essentially, the good people and the people who are fighting the good fight for somehow, despite all this, continue to rise through what we thought were ashes. We thought we had lost when Hillary won. When some people thought we had lost when Trump won. And I said, finally, it's time to wake the fuck up. Mm-hmm. Where we now y'all want to wake up. Now we have protests about it. Now climate change matters.
Right.
Right. Climate change matters back then. Now the environment matters. Environment mattered back then. Now we're having these conversations. Now we're seeing these marches. Well, in my colleague of mine, delegate from California, Tanya Singh, she said, probably the best quote I've heard all year. She said, if Hillary had won, will we still be having these marches? If Hillary had won, will we still have the leverage right now that we have against the DNC? Hell no. There's no unity to it. There's none of that. They go back to denying Bernie Sanders coverage because guess what? Guess who has to win 2020 if she wins 2016? That's what they're going to do. That's what they would have done. But now she's begging for attention in every way she can. Trump is Trump. Trump projects. It's so easy to stop Trump because he does illegal stuff all the time. He brags about it. He's braggadocious as hell. And then he gets federal judge like, you're an idiot. No, you're an idiot. No, it's not happening. That's not happening. That's not happening. And then we have situations like Cory Booker coming out and thought that he was going to have a little presidential run. By the way, funny story about that. After he gave his speech at the DNC convention, at the end of the speech, I looked over to Jared, the counsel. I said, he's about to run for president, right? And he's like, yeah, probably. Because it's the same thing they did with Obama. They put him out there, the end of the show. The end of the program pretty much right before, I think it was right before Bernie spoke perhaps, or right before Michelle spoke. But he had the longest speech, not talking about really anything substantive, just going on about hopes and dreams and all that nonsense. But he had the longest speech. But he was rising. But for some reason recently, bad people have been getting their comeuppance. Voted against the pharmaceutical bill. Boom. Any aspiration you ever had of being president, you thought you were on your pedestal, getting millions of views on YouTube and Facebook, gone. Just like that. So, a lot of people, a lot of progressives are atheists, and, they don't believe in God or higher power, whatever, but it's something happening. There's something happening, and I think it's just the energy that we're putting into it is finally coming full circle, and it's not all for naught. So, no, not in a vacuum. This DNC fraud lawsuit, we can sue the pants off them. We can win $900 million. Somebody's going to write them another check.
Right.
And what are they going to do then? Are they going to go then and change their charter saying they can choose the party members however they want to? And you do that, you're going to lose even more people. And you're going to continue losing elections. And the more you lose, the more power you lose because you're losing office. You're not worth – and people don't get this. If you're losing office over and over and over and over and over again, if I'm a lobbyist, if I'm a corporation – I don't need to invest in you for what? You're going to lose. I could save my money, put all my money into this Republicans campaign, and have him talk about how the Democrats don't even want to vote for you anymore. So now you start to become a liability more than an asset, because now they're playing the field because they never know which way the election might go. But if it starts getting to the point where Democrats can never win Florida, they can never win North Carolina or Virginia, they can never win Ohio or Michigan, why do I need you anymore? How are you going to help me? So we want to see the type of change that's brought not by necessarily, physical, numbers and things like that. We want to see that change brought because we want to put people on alert. We want to put the party on alert that we're coming.
Something that you talked about that we're not really discussing a lot, I think just in general, is the lack of coverage being paid to the DNC lawsuit. I think it's really interesting. So do you have anything to say about this?
Got a lot to say about that. Where to start? First of all, just a fun fact. Rob Schneider actually tweeted about our lawsuit yesterday. That was pretty cool. But yeah, the fact that first time that it was ever talked about was, I think, in mainstream media, they just kept saying, well, there's no basis for it. There's no basis for it. That's the first time when it first got initiated back in June, July timeframe. And then now they're having a motion, and it's legitimately going to determine whether the party has money going forward. It's going to, you got to think, this is a shit show that could possibly happen. Mm-hmm. We're not settling. Jared hasn't gone on record to say that, but I know my friend, and I know how he feels about it. It's not about the money for anybody. We're not settling. They can write a check, but we're not doing it.
Good.
This is a shit show. Tom Perez is going to have to be called to the stand, because you just said, as a DNC chairperson or a person running for the chairperson who's part of DNC, y'all rigged the election. And then you change your statement. So guess what that means? Right hand on the Bible, sir. Which one is it?
That's such an interesting thing I didn't think about.
Debbie Wasserman Schultz is going to have to be questioned. This is a class action lawsuit that's going to, bro. And this judge, what makes it even more beautiful, he's a senior judge, so he has like very few cases. So he has a lot of time to put into this. So you're talking about the subpoena game is about to be crazy. You're talking about Hillary, obviously, right? Is going to have to come up and explain herself. So you're going to try to tell me you didn't have any conversation between you and Debbie Wasserman. You're going to say you didn't have any conversation between, okay, but and we're going to see what information ends up coming out. Somebody slips up. So if a bunch of stories, they're going to have to meet at some point and get all their little stories together. But, like I said, Hillary's going to have to be called up. Tulsi, which I think is probably the most interesting, because people forget where she came from, which is that she was the vice chair.
Yeah.
She gave up the second most powerful position, and then her statement after it was so powerful, and that's what probably made me absolutely say at that time, because that's when you were still like, well, maybe Hillary is shitty, but she's not as shitty as any of the Republicans. It was like being the very beginning. Mm-hmm. When Tulsi said, I'm not going to let them threaten me anymore. I don't fear them. I said, what do you mean fear them? I thought maybe she meant her career, but her career obviously cannot be hurt by them. Mm-hmm. And then Tulsi stepping down because they pretty much obviously threatened to fire her if she supported Bernie. So now we get to hear all of the conversations between Tulsi Gabbard and Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and why they simply couldn't reach an agreement is why they can be unbiased. We get to hear Debbie Wasserman Schultz explain why she all of a sudden decided 4 or 5 debates are good. The questions that are going to be asked and the transcripts that are all going to be released are about to be mind-blowing and so insightful going forward. And a lot of people haven't thought about that. And that's what I said. It's not about the money at the end of the day. We take a settlement, people get a couple of $1,000s back, and we're going about our day.
Right. I don't even care about the money myself. I just want justice.
Exactly. Most of the people who donated the most can afford it, to be quite honest. I want the time, the justice, the accountability to be accounted for. That's what I want.
Yep.
And that's what everybody wants. And most importantly, like I said, the people that have to be called to the stand on this, oh, God. Bernie's going to have to be called to the stand, because we have to know about all these backroom conversations they had at the DNC convention. Nina is going to have to come to the stand. They're going to have to explain why she wasn't okay. If there wasn't any bias towards Bernie, why didn't you let Nina Turner speak when she was slated to speak?
The most popular surrogate.
It gets better. When we start calling out delegates, what happened the morning of the election whenever Bernie Sanders supposedly won two roll call votes, and everybody got them on their phone, were recording, taking pictures of the final counts, and they changed them because Hillary didn't win? Who changed them? Why were they changed? The questions that are going to be answered potentially from this lawsuit are just monumental. There is almost nothing that any news cover, any media source could do to get the information. At least, some of it's going to be lies, and some of it's going to be truth, but we're going to find out probably much more in between both of those,
Right.
And some people are going to be made famous, I'm sure, but not in the best way. But it's going to be, oh man, it's crazy.
I'm excited.
I get really excited.
Yeah,
I know. That's probably it's like the best part of the show. It's like watching House of Cards and like everybody from all the stars of the cast had to go up and talk about all the people that he murdered because they knew about it in some capacity. Like, and he's sitting there looking at him like, you better not snitch. I swear to God. Because, you know, the reason that you enlist people like Umar Bedin and David, because you have beef on them too. Mm-hmm. So now you start wondering, damn, did she start dropping information about them because she blackmailed them? If there any blackmail? What do they say? Yeah. And how willing are they going to repeat? How often are they going to repeat the lie? Are they going to misstep, which most people do? Because there's no way you're going to remember 8 years worth of lies, right? Because this isn't something that started yesterday. And I'm going to talk to Jared, and I'm going to see if we can go get the people who we have that were paid very shortly by Hillary Clinton's campaign before going over to Bernie's campaign, and ask them why they switched, and ask them what they're doing now. I'm sure we can all take a wild guess.
Yeah. Well, and Niko, the best part about this is that we've seen how they constantly tried to sweep the rigging of the primaries under the rug. The DNC, I mean, throughout the whole DNC race, none of them would really admit that the primaries were rigged. And now, I mean, they have to talk about it. They're forced to actually talk about this. So I think it's in details, right? And so, are you going to be at the other hearings? Because if so, you're going to have to write a book. Like, we're going to be waiting on your book.
Yeah, I have to wait. I have to write like 2 books apparently. I have to because I have to write a book about my life because like a lot of crazy stuff happened because of Bernie Sanders. Like I said, this whole thing started when I was going on a trip to Miami for spring break, and like on the video that I did with Jared, I said, you know how sketchy it is when you just get a phone call threatening. I got a phone call that threatened me. It didn't go down the way he thought it was. It didn't. Yeah, he threatened me, and I reminded him really quickly that this politics thing is not really my full identity, bro. And yeah, it's not going to fly. So if you do it again, you're not going to have to worry about finding me. So
that's unbelievable.
I'm going, yeah. And, you know, he said, oh, no. And he was threatening my career, saying that he worked for Bernie Sanders. And, you know, he said things could happen to me and things like that. And then, like, I get a call asking me to go see these lawyers because they want to shoot a documentary about me. And I'm like, where are they at? In this because it's a new office at this time. And like sketch, no cars parked there. It's like Saturday. Obviously nobody's in the office building. And I'm like, I'm gonna die today, but I gotta do this because, you know, I thought, no, I was like, no. And then I thought like, you know, I don't know what this could end up being. I had traction as far as my videos, but I'm like, I have no idea how we're gonna go forward with all this information. We see lawyers all across the country have been trying to do things, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, very successful attorneys too, and they've done their parts wherever they can, but they're being pushed on the back burner time and time again by the media. But at the same time of the rise of my journalism career and my radio show, and I guess the popularity that came from just not only understanding, I think what made the information more potent, I've never really thought about it before. It wasn't the information that I was providing because people were saying that people were cheating all the time, right? There was how many videos about that out? Mm-hmm. But it was because I was able to analyze and break down why it was suspicious politically. You know, my connections through the North Carolina Democratic Party and in the Bernie Sanders campaign allowed me to break that down, and just understanding politics and how they work allowed me to break that down in a way that was easily accessible and could be explained to other people. And you know, with that amount of consistency and I guess appreciation for that, for the ability to do that, it boosted my journalism career that I never intended, not go to school for journalism. Mm-hmm. And at the same time this happens, the DNC Fraud Suit comes out, and I was able to give that just enough push to put it into the progressive spotlight. Mm-hmm. You know, nowhere near as many followers and subscribers and things like that I have now, nowhere near as many views. But, you know, starting out, they didn't have a suit. When I met them, we didn't have that. They didn't have that idea, neither did I. I had a slight following. But if I would have just came and said a bunch of people's names and just that was it, what could I have done? Mm-hmm. If I didn't have the people to talk to because of how involved I was in politics, I didn't know the right people to call and the right questions to ask, we wouldn't have been able to rise this case at the same exact time as I was being boosted to popularity and their super PAC was being boosted to popularity as well. And you know, it just happened. And all the other, not saying that all the other cases are less important, because they're absolutely important, especially for the specific areas that they're in. Like the one in Arizona, I know is a big one. I know there's one like in Ohio. Mm-hmm. But this is huge. And the reason it's so huge is because it's not 1 or 2 people or 50 to 60 people. This is a class action lawsuit for millions of people across the nation. Everybody. Yeah, you can pretend you don't know, but that's not what these classes say, because you can't have a class action lawsuit without what? A bunch of people to fit into a class.
Right.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like that's the difference. You can't have a class, and then just the talent and luck that we got getting a Harvard attorney and a Yale attorney who, and people don't understand how much sacrifice they've made to be able to do what they do. They pretty much ate ramen noodles. They put their kids, having kids to the back burner, having a nice house to the back burner, getting paid. Oh God, Jared could be a millionaire 8 times over with as much as he was getting paid at the time. He said, I'm going to use it to pay my debts, and I don't want any part of this. I want to do what's right. They took all that money, and after saving, they started their own law firm with nothing but a book, a how-to book. They retook the bar to come to Florida, and they fund all of their contingency attorneys. So they help whoever they can, and it's all coming out of their pockets. When do you get that? When do you get this is Hillary's alma mater, where and she was telling me about it, she was like, oh, I can't ever say anything negative about Hillary. All of her Yale friends blocked her.
Wow.
So, oh yeah, this is a real thing, yeah. And you have these almost like stars in the sky, and like we just happen to be in the same place at the same time with the exact mesh of skill and truth and just urge to see justice had that it worked out.
It's encouraging. It's really, really encouraging. And you're someone, getting back to kind of your journalism and whatnot, because you're someone who has just excellent insight. You have so much experience with politics and whatnot. I wanted you to kind of talk about what you're doing now, because I know you're hosting Mi Casa es Su Casa. It's your own show.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that? Because I think that people would really benefit from hearing more from you. So what is it exactly that you're working on right now?
So I have a Facebook page. You can just look my name up. It's Niko D House. Niko, and then just D, and then House. And that's where I do my Facebook live streams for my show. We're also on iHeartRadio. It used to be on Fridays at 7. I would stream from my YouTube, my Facebook, and on iHeartRadio. But my new job will not allow me to do that now, so I'm moving it to Sundays. And we're looking between 11 and 1. It just really depends on what the best time for the radio station is. But of course, I will make a post on this video so that you all will know, and I'll update you so you can tell people. But okay. At the very minimum, you can go to my YouTube page. It's Mi Casa es Su Casa, spelled exactly how it sounds. I'm the first one that comes up. You can Google it; it'll come up. Or you can go to my Facebook page, and I'm constantly streaming from there. And I'm in the process of actually starting a network. And it's not only going to, we just enlisted a group of women who are tired of being marginalized and having to work behind us, right? It's true, right? We dominate, the males dominate the journalism stream.
Right.
And I never really intended for it to happen like that, of course, but I'll tell people I'll do whatever I can. I don't really want credit, nor do I care about it, but we're starting a whole different, channel for just women.
That's awesome.
Under the Mi Casa es Su Casa. Yeah, and they're going to talk about the things they go through, disagree or not, because they're all from different backgrounds, different parts of the country, different countries, and they're going to talk, and they're just going to have that conversation I think needs to be had, and I think people need to hear it. And if I can get my audience to help participate in that, that's pretty much the only thing I'm on board for, and to give them just some guidance from what I've learned and do it, pass it forward like we always try to do. Where I do sports commentating as well, believe it or not. So, and where I actually just enlisted a couple people to do that. And so essentially I have a Patreon account, just patreon.com/Mi Casa es Su Casa. And right now I'm trying to get equipment and things like that, webcam and just things that journalists need to be efficient journalists. And that money isn't going to go towards me. I'm literally trying to mitigate the upfront costs that stop most people from doing what they love to do, which is tell the truth and give their perspective. And that's pretty much the only reason I started the network, is because I want to see other people be able to do what I was fortunate enough to do because Liz and Jared invested in me, and I wouldn't have been able to do what I do now if it wasn't for them taking a chance on me.
Well, perfect. Hey, thank you so much for coming on the program. Just really quick before we go, what's your Twitter handle so people can follow you?
Oh, at Niko CSFB.
All right, perfect. Well, hey, thank you so much for the update. I think that you have fascinating insight, and I'm honestly, after some of the things you told me, you know, thinking about the possibility of Tom Perez and Debbie Wasserman Schultz testifying,
Awesome,
I'm
right?
that much more excited about this suit. So thank you so much for the insight.
I'm waiting for that, man. I'm waiting for that phone call. We got him. He's on the way. He got to go to court. Like, oh man. And hey, just one more thing. You know, thoughts and condolences to Sean Lucas. He was our process server. He was the one. I don't want to speculate one way or the other, but I'll just give the facts out how they are. The DNC made a motion to say that we improperly served them. Less than 2 days later, our process server came up dead in his bathroom, and we have been requesting the autopsy, and we have not been able to get one. A private investigator that I put on the case was not even able to get one. So, you know, condolences out to him. Right. You know, if he died doing what's right, I'm glad that everything is moving in the direction that that his death will at least not be in vain.
Right.
And if that had anything to do with it, and I'm thankful that we can try to give him some vindication by going through and helping this DNC suit, you know, change the country.
Support this podcast by joining the independent progressive media revolution today at humanistreport.com.